ED1 is the piece of content I've been finding myself coming back to over and over again. And today we're going to revisit the Melee ED1 guide, but this time for the combat update that happened back in March. So without any further delay, let's go ahead and get into this guide. If you end up finding this guide helpful, consider subscribing after the fact. And if you want to go above and beyond well into the stratosphere as far as support is concerned, there are super thanks and memberships available on the channel. But with that YouTube stuff out of the way, let's actually get into this. So here is the preset.
What is that? What the fuck is that?
Now yes, this looks absolutely ridiculous as far as the amount of gear and whatnot that I have. And you might be thinking to yourself, wow, there is no way you can survive on that little amount of food. Well, I'm here to tell you it is actually not as bad as it seems, and each piece of gear does have its piece. However, if you don't want to use something, you can feel free to drop it and improv some. However, if there's something in here that you find out you don't really want to bring or bother with, just remove it and improv as necessary. Starting off with the worn equipment, I have the full 4-piece vestments here. The perks are C4R5, Impatient 4, Mobile. Mobile actually goes on melee gear now. They fixed it to where you gain barge adrenaline regardless if you have mobile on your gear, as well as bladed dive, which actually saves us on a swap because in the past we used to have to bring some type of offhand or something like that with mobile on it in order to be able to benefit from barge adrenaline and mobile, but now it just sits on the gear. If you want to put Impatient 4, Devoted 4 here and then rock mobile somewhere else, feel free to combo it wherever. On the bottom here, I just have Biting 4, Hoarding. This is left over from the pre-death cost era. Feel free to combo in what secondary perks you want. However, Biting 4 is definitely important. And I just have Enhanced Devoted here to help a little bit with damage reduction, as playing Investments armor is kind of like using paper mache armor. It is very much a glass cannon type of armor set, so any type of defensive help is useful. Grim is going to help out a lot with its additional crit chance, being that we're going to be using Meteor Strike and Incendiary Shot in a couple places to help out with adrenaline gain. Very much worthwhile. The Lang Swords here just kind of have standard perks. They have Precise 6 Aftershock 1 and then Aftershock 4 Eruptive 2. I have a Quiver here. This is just to hold some Hydrix bolts for a Gricko swap that I have. You could just carry some Hydrix bolts here if you want, if you don't have a Pernix Quiver, but that's all it is there for. I have the Reaver's Ring here just because it is a flat 5% crit chance. There are rotations out there that do take a good advantage of the champion ring effect. However, I typically don't like using them because I don't like mixing in bleeds a lot. I'm pretty sure those rotations are better in the long run, but I just like the flat 5%. It keeps things simple. Zuck Cape is definitely beneficial for buffing up overpower. It gives you 2 hits and reduces the adrenaline cost for it. You don't need the hybrid one, but if you just have the standard Zuck Cape for melee, that will work just fine. Cinderbanes here are pretty much best in slot. If you don't want to worry about glove switching, you could just camp the passage gloves and your run times will be pretty similar. There's actually a lot of leeway for the 6 runs an hour that melee can pretty simply do, but if you don't mind a little bit of glove switching once in a while, definitely bring the cinders. And now on to this monstrosity of an inventory. So we'll just start off with the weapons here. Pterosaur Maul with the enchantment effect is essentially a tier 105 when it works, and it works on Masuda and the crystals at Siru, which makes Pterosaur Maul very strong for ED1. If you don't have a T-Maul, it's not the end of the world. However, I definitely recommend getting one just because of the sheer damage it can produce. I have a physical Easy K in here, and honestly, it's kind of overkill. I just like having a tier 95 cleave swap, but it's not required in the slightest. Now, something that is a requirement here is a Nox Scythe, just because it is halberd range and makes AoE clearing quite a bit easier, because you're able to hit more targets at once. The Masterwork Spear of Annihilation is definitely a best in slot item and is very handy. It buffs your bleed durations by 50%, which is very nice for using Easy K spec. Speaking of Easy K spec, I'll just go over the EOFs I have really quickly. Here I have a Dragon Claw EOF. This is the bread and butter of melee rotations when it comes to crit builds. D-Claw is a very strong EOF, and if you have Meteor going and maybe even Sneak taking in a natural instinct during that, you can get some very good damage out of this EOF. I highly recommend it. Just below that, I have my Easy K inside of an EOF. Now, yes, I have the EOF and I have the physical sword. If you're going to use one of them, just bring the EOF, as it can be extended by the Masterwork Spear effect. The last two EOFs I have are just for AoE damage. I have a Dragon Halberd and I have a Dragon Two-Hander. The Dragon Two-Hander does a lot of damage, but it costs a lot of adrenaline, so it's pretty RNG to get maybe 2 or 3 of these in a row without leaving yourself on 0% adrenaline. And that's where Dragon Halberd comes in. It hits in the same range as Cleave does, and it hits each target for 2 hits, but therein lies kind of the issue with it. It's only kind of a front cone shape in front of you that it hits. It's not just all around in kind of a square. So luring certain minions into position can take a little bit of time to get this to work, but the ease of use that it offers makes it definitely a worthwhile bring. You might have noticed the ECB here just kind of staring at you, and it's just a Hydrix Gricko swap. You could put a Royal Crossbow here. You could put pretty much any two-hand crossbow here, and as long as it has Coroming 4 on it, that's all you really have to worry about. And with the combat update, as far as I'm concerned, we always have 100% accuracy. It's just your damage is going to be garbage. But when it comes to Gricko, we're not looking for the damage. We're just looking to proc these Hydrix bolts and get the adrenaline from that and from the potential crits that Gricko can do. Overall, a very strong switch to bring. The last two switches per se that we are bringing are the enhanced gloves of passage. Basically how these work is you equip the gloves, and then after 9 seconds you get the additional effects from the enchantment, or you can swap immediately and get the base effect for it. And all this does is increase your bleed damage on any active bleed for 10 seconds. And then the Jaws of the Abyss just helps give extra adrenaline on basic abilities when bleeds are active. Mostly this is used when you're using a Easy K and stacking all the bleeds to buff it up. You can then gain a lot of adrenaline in a short amount of time with this equipped. Now, one switch you might have noticed that is absent from this preset is the Scourge. And I've noticed in a couple comments people want me to say Scourge, but I'm going to say Scourge from now on forever because people made a nuisance about it, and now I will live rent-free in your head from saying Scourge. Personally, I disagree with the stupid whip existing in the first place, but that is an old man yelling at cloud talking point that I kind of go into on stream a lot, and I won't get into it too much here, but Zamorgil's Nexus is very convenient to have. It allows you to basically have a free shield if we just activate Greater Bone Shield. It gives you access to all of the main defensive abilities like Reflect and Revenge and other things like that. You will get an extended Debilitate. The only thing you don't get access to is Revenge, which is probably for the best because getting a free Revenge even with a T60 shield would be disgustingly OP. But this is just what I use for a shield swap. If you don't have the Nexus and just want to bring a T90 shield or maybe a Spirit Shield swap for funsies, go ahead. However, this is not a switch. This is just something that sits in the inventory. All the other stuff that just sits in the inventory, expensive spices just give you an extra 50 HP when you eat each blubber. Thus, on a total blubber, you get an extra 150 heal. On a preset like this, it would definitely be better just to bring an extra blubber because you're not going to gain the total health of the blubber from this one slot. However, I like it for the individual heals because I don't really eat too often in the dungeon, and when I do, I want that single tick to be as much healing as possible without draining adrenaline, or else I'd just be using solids. The Lucky Charms are just to help out with GP per hour. Sometimes you get some Onyx dust from it, sometimes you get some other things that are kind of nice. Overall, they're pretty worthwhile to bring. Dominion Mines work on the crystals at Siru. Definitely recommend bringing them as it's a free anywhere from, sometimes they hit 10Ks, sometimes they hit 11Ks, sometimes I see 12Ks. It seems kind of random what they actually hit, but a free anywhere from 20 to 25k damage on the crystals when time is of the essence is definitely worthwhile to bring. Armor spikes are free damage anytime you take a hit, so definitely just have them in the preset. Power Burst of Acceleration allows you to zoom through a few parts of the dungeon, speeding up overall runs per hour. You'll see later on in the run where I use those. Vuln Bombs are pretty self-explanatory. You throw them on a target, you get a free 10% damage. Rune Pouches here just hold runes so I can use Disrupt Shield, and I can do Vengeance if I ever remember to press Venge, and also Borrowed Power if I want to put Smoke Cloud on something. And other than that, I have an Overload and an Adrenaline Potion, and that's about it. That is this entire monstrosity of a preset explained. As far as items from the Bank preset are concerned, I'll use the Quarm, Lantidime, and Spiritweed Incense. I am on a Calgarian Demon, so you could probably skip the Spiritweed if you want. I do use Powder of Penance because, as you might have noticed in the preset, I don't have a Blessed Flask. However, you kind of get flattened with damage all over the place, so Powder of Penance is more than capable of giving you all the prayer you need per dungeon run. And other than that, I use the Thermal Flask here, an Overload, a Weapon Poison Triple Plus, and a Summoning Renewal. The Summoning Renewal could probably be skipped as well because Calg only procs once a minute. However, using these is habitual at this point. I'm just used to always spamming all the sticks and the potions, so do as you see fit. The relics I'm using are kind of my standard elite dungeon relics. I have Blessing of Het just because it just fits in the slot. I have Conservation of Energy, which is highly useful for saving Adrenaline with Overpower and your Berserk. And the only reason I run Luck of the Dwarves is because I always forget to ring swap, and I want the crit chance kind of going everywhere throughout the dungeon. It makes quite the difference having 5% crit chance when you're trying to spam out a bunch of Dragon Two-Handers and Halberds, getting all of that Adrenaline back. I wish this relic was only like 50 cost, so I could just toss Zerk Fury up here in the top and call it a day. But with this one costing 200, you can only put a 100 value relic in the top slot here. And so I just choose Blessing of Het. If there's something else in here that you want to pick that's 100 or even 50 cost, feel free. And last but certainly not least, I just stay on the Lunar spellbook so I don't have to bring my third rune pouch. But that is about it as far as all of the gear and setup and whatnot that I do. Let's go ahead and get into an example run. Alrighty, let's go ahead and do an example run. Now, I will say the trash mob clearing in here is not exactly the most optimal strats. However, for doing 6 runs an hour, you can be pretty lenient with your rotations and be pretty improv heavy because melee can go quite faster than sub 10s with banking included. But without me going on any further tangents, let's just get into this run. So what I'll do is I'll surge down this hallway, click on this tile here, and then Bladed Dive Surge. G-Fury this guy with my Scythe, hit Meteor Strike, and then target this guy and hit a D-Halley. Sometimes this guy gets hit, sometimes he doesn't, but this is where I use my first Power Burst tip. And here I'll typically just go for a Dragon Two-Hander, and kind of Hurricane and Quake as needed. And here I'm just going to go for a second one because these guys are kind of annoying. And here I'll just go for another G-Fury and hit a Dragon Two-Hander because it'll hit all of them. And then here I typically do Protect Mage because these guys can be very deadly, especially investments where we're basically just playing Paper Mache as armor. And then on this guy, I'll go ahead and hit Incendiary Shot. Kind of move back a tile and then hit Gricko. Here I'll hit Freedom and then just flurry these guys. And for this one, I usually just hit Overpower. And then here I'll Surge Dive over to this tile and then go behind these barrels. Forgot I used Flurry there, so just use like Hurricane, Quake, your basic AoEs to kill these guys off. You can kind of interchange where you use Flurry and where you use Hurricane and Quake. And it usually works out rotation-wise. Here, I'll hit Devotion and Anticipate, dive over, and then G-Flurry these dudes. One of them's still alive, so just go ahead and kill them. And then I'll run in and Surge Bladed Dive over to this tile. And as long as you play on this line here, all of the R-hats will get stuck behind this little pillar. But then for Sanctum, all I do is toss a Vuln Bomb, and Chaos Roar, use my Spear to go ahead and start an easy K rotation. Just get off all the bleeds you can. And use a Smash to give some extra damage on those bleeds, and then go for a Meteor Strike. Use some more abilities. Get the last bleed off. And then once I'm at 100, I'll equip my Vestments Hood, and then Anticipate, Zerk with A-Pot, and then Barge. Bleed the Assault, and then go for a Overpower. Maybe G Fury the D Claw. Tried to Chaos Roar out of the habit there, but here what you can do is then just use a Lang Spec into a Hurricane. Sometimes you don't even need the Hurricane. That was a 41. That's on the faster side of times that I see there. Anywhere from 40 to 48 seconds is kind of my average. Don't forget to swap your gloves back to your Cinderbanes, and then just kind of Surge, Bladed Dive around here to get to these guys. I'll usually just G-Flurry here, or sometimes I will just basic him if I'm on low adrenaline. Maybe Target Cycle, and use some abilities to get some extra Dren. Devotion and Surge, Bladed Dive here. And then just kind of use your basic AoEs, or your normal AoEs, I should say. Here's my second dose of Acceleration Potion, and here I'm using Dive Surge instead of Surge Dive, just to get the direction that I want going. This guy I usually just hit Overpower. It is overkill, but kills him pretty quickly, so it works. And click on this tile, kind of dive over this direction. And here, I'll go ahead and just use basic abilities, because I want to build up and have Meteor Strike ready for the guys up top. And then make sure I have my Scythe equipped. Surge, Bladed Dive up here. Hit G Fury into a Meteor, and then D2H, and they should all die. There they go. And here, put my Mage Prey back on, and Barge. Hit Assault, and then destroy the other one. He got healed this time because I got stunned. Just go ahead and kill him with basics. And here, I'll just G-Flurry these dudes. Then Surge Bladed Dive over here, toss a Vuln Bomb, and then just use D-Hally while targeting this one to hit all of them. I usually use 2 if I don't have the crit buff, and then maybe like a Hurricane. They're all dead. Surge Bladed Dive, rinse, repeat. Move around, and then here again, I'm just going to build up Adrenaline. Maybe use my Scythe to hit a Cleave or something like that. Because the goal here is to get an Incendiary shot off. And then I usually just do it on whichever one has the most HP. This one got healed, so it is what it is. But just build a Dren by killing off the rest of the Zealots. And I Surge down. Hit Freedom. Equip T-Maul. Zerk. Surge Bladed Dive. Target Cycle Barge. Lead the Assault. G-Fury or Overpower. Kind of just do standard Zerk stuff. Use Chaos Roar on a D-Claw, and then hit Devotion. You want to wait a little bit during the spin. It usually takes 5 or 6 ticks for the damage to fully build up on the spin. And Devotion, if you wait that GCD, it'll last the whole time. And then you just got to get them down to 275k, and then you're good to go. And now the goal here is just to build up Leng Shard stacks. Or whatever they're called. Icy Tempest stacks, or whatever they're called. But you want to build those up, just because it's really nice for this next phase. And each of these that you kill, you get 5% damage reduction, which, since we're zerking investments, that is going to be extremely helpful. Also, when Devotion comes back off cooldown, you can go ahead and use that. Sometimes you'll have more food here, sometimes you won't have any food here, so just play as defensive as you need to on these. Like, you can pop Immorts, you can use Barricades, go for Reses, all sorts of stuff. But also, the less time these things have to attack you, the less damage you take, so going as fast as you can is usually ideal. Overload as needed, all of that good stuff. And usually when I'm about 55% to 60% on these, that's when I'll go ahead and start using things like Meteor Strike and start getting a pre-build done. Like on this next one here, I'm going to use Meteor. And I'll Gricko on Masuda and just kind of build up from here. That one I'm actually far enough away from to where it won't matter. Here I Zerked. I'm going to go ahead and hit Divert because I can. Then I'm going to bleed Flurry. That'll be helpful for later. I'm going to G-Fury. Use my Disrupt Shield as necessary. Go for that Lang Spec. I believe it's every 5 autos is when he does a magic hit, and that's the one that hits pretty big. And here I'm just going to stay high adrenaline and use Assault and Hurricane, a couple things like that. You can go for a faster Masuda, but it's not going to matter a whole lot as far as your run is concerned. Now here I Surge, Bladed Dive over here, and pretty much immediately hit Devotion. Stall a Desi on this guy, let it release on its own, and then hit another couple basics. Just trying to kill these off to get the Devotion extension, so we can go ahead and do Siru. And here's where I'll use my Acceleration Potion again. And then just use a Divert there with a Barge and whatnot. I had to kind of improv there because I kind of just accidentally barged thinking I wouldn't have Zerk, but I did, so that was nice. And here I'm just going to use a bunch of abilities to try and build some Lang Stack specs again. I'm going to screw up those words a lot. Some Lang Stacks, there we go. I finally got through it, but here you want to end on kind of high adrenaline. I'm just going to basic ability the rest of this. Make sure my gloves are actually equipped. And then it's time to go up. So then immediately dive over. You can go up either side, it's not going to matter, but have a Vuln Bomb prepped. And then click release. Barge with your T-Maul, bleed Assault and drop your mines. And then swap to your Spear and use an Easy K spec. Do not use Chaos Roar on this Easy K, it doesn't need it. Get your bleeds off, use a Smash, and then just start building up from here. And here what I like to do is if I get it to work out, I'll G Fury the Meteor, then Gricko. Here I'm actually going to swap back to the Hood, Zerk, use the A-Pot and Barge, and then use Chaos Roar here with a D-Claw and bleed the Assault. Maybe G Fury here with my Hurricane. That should finish it off. And here I'm going to use Overpower. My Lang Spec, I'm going to go for a Gricko, equip the T-Maul, and just use another couple D-Claws. And hopefully we get this. Maybe Sever will do it. Sever did it. 104 scales. Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't expecting that. Oh my goodness. That's ridiculous. Okay. Give me one moment. Alrighty, so as you can see, we did go ahead and get a fast one cycle before the Ubers. It was very close on this crystal. That was the last possible tick we had. And I used Sever because its hit shows up faster than something like Quake or anything like that. But typically the most consistency I found for this quote-unquote fast one cycle is using Easy K on the first crystal, using Chaos Roar with a Dragon Claw to help nuke the second crystal. You'll also want to have Meteor mixed in with your Easy K as you saw, and then just doing all of the damage dump you possibly can on these two crystals. And I found it to be relatively consistent, assuming I'm doing my part in putting in the rotation correctly and not making mistakes and losing ticks and whatnot. If you want to, you can go for the slow version of one cycle where you kill the first two crystals and then save your Zerk damage or save your burst damage, I should say. For the last crystal, you'll probably lose anywhere from 10 to 20 seconds or so, because you have to wait for the Uber animation and then kill the crystal, which the Uber animation takes, I believe it's 10 seconds, maybe a little bit less, and then you have, you know, the couple of seconds that you're going to have to burst it down. So it shouldn't matter too much as far as 6 runs an hour is concerned. I enjoy going for the fast one cycle because it keeps the dungeon exciting. But before I go on probably my 17th rant in this guide, I'll go ahead and close out the video here. If you have questions, feel free to leave it down in the comments below. And like I said before, these guides are here for you to pull as much or as little information as you need to make your melee solos a little bit more efficient. So hopefully you were able to get something out of this. But anyways, thank you very much for watching. Your viewership is greatly appreciated. Have a wonderful morning, evening, afternoon, nighttime, whatever it is, wherever you are, and I'll see you next time for the next guide. Peace.